There are moments in time when the air itself seems charged with expectancy, when the ordinary fabric of life carries threads of something extraordinary woven through it. Such hours are not announced with trumpets in the sky or banners stretched across the heavens. They arrive quietly, like a whisper carried on the wind, discerned only by those whose hearts are attentive enough to recognize their arrival. If you are reading this now, it is not an accident, nor is it the consequence of mere chance or trivial coincidence. For just as a lock is fashioned for a key, so too are certain messages fashioned for certain souls. This one has found you, and its arrival is itself a sign that the season of waiting is drawing to its end. We speak of release, and release is never merely about loosening chains of iron or breaking visible bonds. True release is the unfurling of the soul that has long been compressed by burdens too great to name. It is the sigh of relief after years of holding one's breath. It is the dawning recognition that the doors, which seemed locked forever, were never bolted from the outside, but only required the courage to push against them. The fact that you stand at the threshold of such release is both an honor and a responsibility. For to be chosen is not only to be favored, it is also to be summoned. If you look back across the story of your life, you may notice a pattern that is almost invisible at first, but undeniable upon reflection. The disappointments that once felt like detours, the delays that seemed unfair, the obstacles that mocked your strength, these were not random afflictions. They were chisels in the hand of a sculptor, removing excess stone to reveal the figure hidden within. You have been prepared, not pampered, trained, not indulged. And now, at last, the season that has been spoken in whispers is arriving in full voice. There is a reason why the message has reached you before September 23rd. That date, insignificant on the world's calendars, holds weight in the unseen order. For time, as most conceive it, is only a linear succession of days and nights. But for those attuned to the deeper music, time is more like a grand tapestry in which moments of destiny are stitched with golden thread. September 23rd is not a number, it is a hinge. And when the hinge turns, doors open that no man can shut. If this message has arrived before that turning, it is because you are meant to step across the threshold prepared, awake, and unafraid. Release does not mean escape. It is not the shirking of duty or the fleeing from responsibility. Release is the unburdening that equips you to run further, to climb higher, to labor with a joy that weariness cannot conquer. The prisoner freed from chains does not become a vagabond, he becomes a witness to freedom itself. Likewise, your release is not simply for your own comfort, though it will bring relief. It is for the sake of those who will encounter you afterward. For your liberty will serve as a lantern in their darkness. Consider the weight of this calling. To be chosen is not to be better than others, but to be entrusted with what others could not yet carry. It is not a crown bestowed for glory, but a mantle laid upon your shoulders for service. The world may never applaud, and the crowd may never cheer, but the heavens know, and the author of your story has inscribed your name upon this chapter with deliberate care. That is why this message has found you. That is why it burns with urgency. If you pause long enough to listen inwardly, you may sense the truth of these words. Somewhere deep within, beneath the doubts and fears, there is a recognition that you have been waiting for this. The restlessness that haunted your nights, the discontent that no success or possession could satisfy, the ache that no comfort could soothe, all of these were the birth pangs of release. They were not meant to torment you, but to alert you that you were never meant to remain in chains. The day of release will not come with spectacle visible to every eye. It may come as quietly as the dawn after a long night, so gradual that the first rays of light go unnoticed. Yet once it comes, everything is transformed. You will walk lighter, think clearer, and feel as though invisible weights have fallen away. What once seemed impossible will become natural, for release awakens capacities you never knew you possessed. It is like the unsealing of a hidden chamber within yourself, where treasures long buried finally come into the light. And yet, release requires readiness. That is why the message is given now, before the appointed time. For it would be cruel to open a door for one who is still asleep, unprepared to step through. Preparation is not about gathering resources or mastering skills, though those have their place. It is about aligning the heart, uncluttering the soul, and choosing to trust the path even when its destination is unseen. To be ready for release is to loosen your grip on what is passing so that your hands are free to receive what is coming. Perhaps you feel the weight of unworthiness, the nagging thought that such words could not possibly apply to you. But worthiness was never the condition of being chosen, willingness was. The author delights not in perfection but in surrender. Those who stumble yet rise again are nearer to the heart of release than those who parade in flawless self-sufficiency. You are not summoned because you are flawless, you are summoned because you are willing, and in that willingness lies the seed of transformation. As September 23rd approaches, let the days before it be a time of attentiveness. Pay heed to the subtle nudges, the quiet invitations, the doors that begin to creak open without your forcing. Do not dismiss them as coincidences. Do not shrug them off as irrelevant. Every thread in the pattern is significant, and to overlook them is to miss the whisper before the trumpet sounds. This is the season when the unseen is pressing into the seen, when eternity brushes against the temporal, and when the chosen are summoned to rise. You are not alone in this. Though the path may seem solitary, countless others across time and place have stood at similar thresholds, trembling with both fear and hope. They too were summoned, they too were prepared, and they too stepped into release, becoming more than they ever imagined they could be. Their witness surrounds you like a great cloud, urging you not to falter now. You are part of something larger, something that stretches beyond your own life, something that carries the fragrance of eternity itself. The message has reached you not later, not too late, but precisely on time. And if it has reached you before September 23rd, it is because you are meant to walk into that day with eyes wide open, heart fully awake, and soul prepared for release. Do you want me to expand this even further with biblical or mythological imagery, like C.S. Lewis often did, so the style feels even closer to his? Release is not escape, but the unburdening that equips you for greater purpose. To understand this, one must first recognize how often the human heart mistakes relief for freedom. There are those who flee from duty and call it liberty, who abandon their place of responsibility and cloak their retreat in noble-sounding words. Yet escape, however tempting, is always tinged with fear, while true release carries within it a quiet boldness. Escape runs from something, but release runs towards something. Escape is a severing, release is an unfolding. When chains fall away, the prisoner may think only of the absence of weight, but the deeper reality is the presence of possibility. Many souls live bound by chains they cannot name. Some are visible, grinding labor, hostile environments, the endless press of obligations. Others are invisible, but heavier still shame that clings like a shadow, bitterness that corrodes silently, fear that whispers at every turn. These are not cages made of iron, but of the mind and heart, and they confine just as surely. In such conditions, the longing for escape is natural. Who would not wish to cast off the yoke and run as far as the horizon allows? Yet mere escape leaves the soul aimless. It frees the body but not the spirit. A bird that flees its cage without learning to fly will only stumble upon another snare. Release, by contrast, does not leave one wandering. It restores wings and reminds the creature it was born for the sky. When one thinks of release as purpose, rather than flight, the trials of life take on a different hue. Hardships that seemed cruel now appear as training. Burdens that once seemed unfair reveal themselves as strengthening weights. Just as the athlete must endure resistance to grow strong, so the soul must bear trials to be made fit for its destiny. The burden, therefore, was never meaningless. It was a shaping instrument, preparing the chosen for the hour when release would come. If the chains had been removed too soon, the muscles of perseverance would not have been formed. If the night had been cut short, the eyes would not be ready for the brightness of dawn. Release, then, comes at the appointed time, when the one who bore the burden is not merely desperate to be free, but prepared to walk rightly once freedom is given. It is not indulgence but commissioning. The moment of release is less like a prisoner slipping past a distracted guard, and more like a soldier entrusted with his orders at last. The weight is lifted not so he may do nothing, but so he may do something greater than he could under bondage. This distinction matters, for it is the measure of whether freedom will last. Those who mistake escape for release often return to their chains, fashioning new prisons even while boasting of their liberty. They wander, restless, because they have fled from but not stepped into. But the one who receives true release discovers not emptiness but calling. He does not ask merely, "What am I free from?" but, "What am I free for?" That question transforms the entire experience. It turns freedom into fuel and suffering into story. The image of release is found in countless parables of life and myth. Consider the seed pressed beneath the soil. Its confinement is dark, heavy, and silent. If it were given escape, it might wish only to be pulled back into the light as it once was. But release comes differently. Release cracks the seed open, allows it to die in its former shape, and summons forth the life within. The release of the seed is not an escape from the earth, but a purpose realized through growth. And in this growth, what once looked like burial becomes the very condition for fruitfulness. So too the soul that has long been buried in toil or sorrow may think freedom means removal from its place of pain. But true release often keeps the soul in the same soil while transforming its nature. The ground no longer feels like a grave, but a garden. The stone that once seemed immovable becomes the pedestal upon which something new rises. This is the unburdening that equips, not the fleeing that abandons. To walk in release requires a change of vision. Where once the eyes saw only prison walls, they must now see the open horizon. Where once the heart cried only for relief, it must now cry for purpose. Release is not an ending but a beginning, though it feels like both at once. The lifting of the weight gives rest, yes, but the rest is preparation for the journey ahead. One does not linger forever at the threshold. One steps through it into the unknown, guided by the conviction that the very act of being released is proof of a greater calling. Think, too, of how release restores dignity. Chains do not only weigh down the body, they diminish the soul. They whisper lies that the captive is weak, unworthy, forgotten. But when release comes, those lies crumble. The very act of being unburdened reveals that the burden was never meant to define, only to refine. The chains fall away, and beneath them is the self as it was always intended to be. Stronger, wiser, more compassionate because of what was endured. This restored dignity is essential, for only those who know their worth can carry their purpose faithfully. There will always be the temptation to equate release with rest, and to stop there, clutching at comfort as if it were the goal. But true release will not let one remain idle. It stirs restlessness, not the old restlessness of despair, but a new restlessness of vision. It calls the soul to act, to speak, to move in directions once thought impossible. The wings that have been restored are not for decoration, they are for flight, and though flight brings new risks, it also brings the realization that the sky itself was waiting all along. Release, then, is a summons disguised as a gift. It relieves, but it also charges. It heals, but it also sends forth. And for the chosen, it is never arbitrary. It comes at the precise moment when preparation has reached its fullness, when the soul is both humbled by its struggle and strengthened by its endurance. It is both a reward and a responsibility, both an ending of captivity and the beginning of destiny. September 23rd is not a date, but a hinge of destiny where doors open. To think of time merely as the succession of days, weeks and years is to see only the surface of a deeper current. Humanity, with its calendars and clocks, often mistakes the measurement for the reality, assuming that moments are nothing more than numbers on a page. Yet beneath the simple sequence of days lies an order far richer and more intricate, one that binds meaning into the very fabric of time. Not every day is alike, though each may seem to pass with the same 24 hours. Some are mere threads in the pattern, while others are golden knots upon which the tapestry of a life turns. September 23rd is one such knot, not because of its numerical placement, but because of the weight it carries in the unseen order. A hinge of destiny is never noticed until it swings. While closed, it appears unremarkable, a simple fixture unnoticed in the architecture of events. Yet when the hinge turns, it alters everything connected to it, shifting what was behind into what lies ahead. The hinge of September 23rd is not meant to be observed with the casual eye of those who treat days as disposable. It is meant to be recognized by those who sense that time itself can carry intention, that the flow of events is guided by a hand greater than chance. For such souls, the date is not a number circled on a calendar, but a doorway in the corridor of their journey, a point where the landscape ahead changes from what was behind. Those who dismiss destiny see no difference between one day and the next, and thus they stumble past hinges without ever noticing that doors were opening. But for the chosen, the awareness begins even before the moment arrives. They feel a restlessness that grows stronger, as if the soul itself were tugged forward by invisible cords. They wake with a sense that something is approaching, though they cannot name it. They begin to see signs in the ordinary, clues embedded in conversations, reminders tucked into the folds of daily life. Such signs are not accidents. They are the quiet whisper of destiny preparing its hinge. The significance of September 23rd is not in the digits but in the turning. Just as the seasons shift, not by the arbitrary numbering of a day, but by the unseen balance of the earth, so too do seasons of the soul shift at points marked by eternity. The hinge is a threshold, and thresholds carry both risk and promise. To step across is to leave behind the familiar, to embrace a chapter not yet written. For some, this moment will come like the sudden bursting open of gates long closed, a rush of opportunity that cannot be denied. For others, it will come quietly, almost imperceptibly, a gentle nudge that changes the course of a life forever. But whether dramatic or subtle, the change is real, for once a hinge has turned, the door does not swing back to its former place. It is important to note that a hinge is not chosen by the one who walks through the door. No one selects the day upon which destiny arrives. Just as no child chooses the hour of birth, the hinge belongs to the larger design, and its timing is deliberate. September 23rd carries with it the weight of timing, not of human making but of divine intention. To arrive at such a hinge unprepared is to risk missing the doorway altogether, wandering past what was meant to be entered. Yet to arrive prepared, awake, and willing is to step into a space already prepared for you, as though the door had been carved with your name upon it long before you approached. Consider how doors function. They separate spaces, but they also connect them. They guard the old room while beckoning toward the new. When closed, they appear as barriers. When open, they reveal vistas unseen. So it is with the hinge of destiny. September 23rd stands not merely as a date, but as the opening of such a door. On one side lies the long preparation, the years of labor, the slow formation of character under pressure. On the other side lies release, opportunity, new calling, and the forward motion of the journey. The door does not erase what came before, but gives it meaning. For only after the door swings do the trials of the past reveal their purpose. To understand the weight of such a moment is to stand in awe of the way time itself can be hallowed. There are days when the eternal brushes against the temporal, when the ordinary becomes a vessel of the extraordinary. One might look back years later and say, that was the day everything changed. Yet at the time, it may have appeared no different than any other, save for the one who carried awareness in their heart. For them, the day was alive with possibility, heavy with meaning, vibrant with the pulse of destiny. The hinge of September 23rd does not close behind you. Once opened, it sets in motion a chain of events that cannot be reversed. This is why its approach carries urgency. Preparation is not about frantic striving, but about attentiveness, about recognizing that when the door opens, hesitation may cost more than courage ever will. To be ready is to be watchful, to live in expectation rather than complacency. It is to treat the moment not as a curiosity, but as a commission, a summons to rise into the next chapter of the story. And yet, one must not imagine the hinge to be magical in itself. The power is not in the digits of the calendar, but in the alignment of purpose and timing. September 23rd is not sacred because it is marked by men, but because it is marked by meaning. It is the day chosen for the door to swing, and thus it holds its significance. In the same way, a wedding day or a day of birth is sacred not for the number, but for the life-changing reality it ushers in. So too with this hinge of destiny, it is the transition that matters, not the arithmetic. When one steps across such a threshold, they often carry with them a sense of inevitability, as though they were always meant for this moment. The doubts that haunted them before begin to dissolve, replaced by a quiet assurance that the turning of the hinge was no accident. It is in this recognition that strength is found, for to know that the door was meant to open for you is to walk through it with courage. The burden of uncertainty is lifted, and in its place is the conviction of purpose. Thus September 23rd must be regarded not with superstition but with reverence. It is not an omen but an appointment. It is not a number circled in fear, but a hinge polished by destiny, waiting to swing. To encounter it unprepared is to risk stumbling at the threshold, but to meet it with open eyes and willing heart is to step into a chapter for which all the previous pages have been preparing you. The door will open, and when it does, what lies beyond will reshape not only your path, but your understanding of why you walk the road behind you at all. Being chosen is not about superiority, but about responsibility and surrender. To be chosen does not mean that one has been elevated above others, as if to stand upon a pedestal, admired for brilliance, perfection, or inherent greatness. Rather, it means that one has been entrusted with a burden, given a role, and called to carry something that others may not yet be ready to bear. It is not a mark of pride but of humility, for the chosen one must always remember that what distinguishes them is not their own merit, but the purpose laid upon them by a hand greater than their own. Many have mistaken chosenness for favoritism, imagining that it is evidence of being more valuable, more worthy, or more capable than those around them. But chosenness is not about possession of greater worth. It is about the willingness to shoulder a greater task. Superiority isolates, but true chosenness unites. To imagine oneself superior because of being chosen is to betray the very nature of the call. For the chosen are not meant to withdraw into pride, but to step deeper into service. Superiority looks down from a distance, but responsibility bends down to lift others up. The one who believes themselves chosen to be superior becomes a tyrant. The one who understands they are chosen for responsibility becomes a servant leader. And the highest calling of all is never clothed in arrogance but in humility, for the greater the responsibility, the greater the need to stoop low in order to fulfill it faithfully. Responsibility is always the companion of chosenness. When a lamp is lit, it is not for its own sake but to shed light for those who dwell in darkness. When a messenger is entrusted with news, it is not for them to hoard but to deliver. In the same way, when one is chosen, it is not for self-exaltation, but for the sake of what their life can accomplish in the lives of others. The chosen one bears a mantle, and mantles are not garments of luxury, but coverings of duty. They are heavy at times, demanding sacrifice, perseverance, and courage. Yet this is the very essence of chosenness, to be entrusted with what is heavy, because you have been prepared to carry it. Surrender is the hidden strength of the chosen, for without surrender, responsibility becomes unbearable, and chosenness turns into pride or despair. To surrender is not to relinquish dignity, but to recognize the source of the calling. It is to admit that one did not choose oneself, that the path is not entirely of one's own making, and that strength must come from beyond. This surrender is what keeps the chosen from collapsing under the weight of expectation. It reminds them that they are instruments rather than masters, vessels rather than authors. To be chosen, therefore, is to be constantly aware of dependence upon the one who calls. The greatest danger for the chosen is the temptation to glory in the title without embracing the burden. History is filled with figures who claimed chosenness as a badge of superiority while neglecting the responsibility that accompanied it. Their downfall was inevitable, for chosenness without surrender corrupts the soul. But those who recognized that their selection was not about privilege, but about service, carried their calling with dignity. Even when the path was marked with suffering, they understood that to be chosen is to be poured out, to be spent for a cause beyond self, and to live not for applause, but for faithfulness. Chosenness is also a paradox, for it often falls upon those who feel least qualified. The unassuming shepherd, the hesitant leader, the overlooked dreamer. Again and again, destiny has chosen those who were neither the strongest nor the most celebrated. This too is part of the mystery. Chosenness is not about proving worthiness, but about revealing willingness. The mantle does not land on the proud chest of the one who shouts for recognition, but upon the bowed shoulders of the one who is ready to yield. Responsibility chooses humility as its dwelling place, for only there can it rest securely. To surrender is also to let go of the illusion of control. The chosen one must accept that their life will not be wholly their own, that their steps may be redirected, that doors may open or close not according to their preference, but according to a larger plan. Such surrender requires trust, and trust is costly. It means moving forward without all the answers, obeying without all the clarity, and embracing a path that may often seem lonely. Yet within this surrender lies the hidden joy of chosenness, the assurance that your life is part of a story far greater than your own. Responsibility always extends beyond the self. The chosen one is not called merely to personal fulfillment, but to communal impact. Their choices ripple outward, affecting others in ways they may never fully see. For this reason, chosenness demands vigilance, wisdom, and integrity. It is not a private crown but a public trust. And this is why surrender is essential without yielding to the higher purpose. The chosen will be crushed by the weight of responsibility or corrupted by the lure of superiority. With surrender, however, responsibility becomes bearable, even joyful, because it is no longer carried alone. It is easy to envy those who are chosen, to imagine that their path is easier, their destiny brighter, their lives more significant. But the truth is often the opposite. The chosen path is rarely the easiest, it is usually the steepest. It demands sacrifice others are not asked to make. It calls for endurance through seasons others cannot understand. It exposes the chosen to scrutiny, trial, and testing. And yet, for all its difficulty, it carries within it a strange and radiant peace, the peace of knowing that your struggle is not meaningless, your pain not wasted, your effort not in vain. For the chosen one, every trial becomes preparation, every setback becomes shaping, every burden becomes part of the greater purpose. Thus, chosenness is not superiority but stewardship. It is not entitlement but entrustment. It does not elevate one above others but places one among them, tasked with carrying light into dark places, strength into weak places, and hope into despairing places. To be chosen is to surrender the right to live only for oneself, and to embrace the higher call of living for something more. It is the paradox of power made perfect in weakness, of greatness revealed in service, of freedom found in surrender. The chosen one learns that their life is not their own, yet in that realization discovers the truest freedom of all, the freedom to become fully what they were created to be. Not for their own glory, but for the sake of the story they were written into before they ever drew breath. The trials of the past were preparation, chiseling you into readiness. Hardship has a strange way of disguising itself as misfortune when, in truth, it is often the most effective teacher. At the moment of struggle, it feels unbearable, heavy, and even cruel. The heart cries out for relief and cannot see beyond the immediate pain. Yet, when viewed from a distance, those very struggles that once seemed to crush you begin to reveal their hidden work. They were not merely obstacles placed in your path, but instruments shaping you into something stronger, wiser, and far more resilient than you would have been without them. To be chiseled is never a pleasant experience. The sculptor's tool strikes against the stone with force, breaking away pieces that once seemed permanent. The stone has no choice in the matter. It cannot comprehend what image is hidden within its rough edges. But the sculptor knows, and every strike of the chisel is precise, intentional, purposeful. In the same way, the trials you endured were not random blows without meaning. Each one removed something unnecessary, something that could not remain if the true shape of your destiny were to be revealed. What felt like loss was refinement. What felt like destruction was creation. Preparation often hides behind the mask of pain. One does not realize in the moment that they are being trained for something greater. The sleepless nights, the disappointments, the betrayals, the seasons of waiting, all of them seem to stretch endlessly, as though you had been forgotten or abandoned. Yet the very silence that tormented you was strengthening your ability to endure. The very delays that frustrated you were teaching patience. The very betrayals that wounded you were sharpening your discernment. Each trial was a tutor, stern but necessary, shaping qualities within you that comfort and ease could never have produced. It is tempting to believe that success is the result of talent, opportunity, or sheer willpower. But the deeper truth is that success without preparation collapses under its own weight. The trials you endured were preparing your foundation so that when release comes, you will not crumble under the pressure. Consider the roots of a tree. They grow deepest during seasons of drought, stretching further underground in search of water. Without the drought, the roots would remain shallow, and the tree would topple at the first great storm. Likewise, The droughts in your life forced your roots deeper, anchoring you so that when the winds of responsibility blow, you will stand unshaken. The chiseling of trials has also refined your vision. When life is easy, distractions abound. One drifts from comfort to comfort, never pausing to ask deeper questions. But when hardship comes, clarity arrives with it. You learn to distinguish between what is fleeting and what endures, between what is superficial and what is essential. The struggles stripped away illusions, leaving behind truth. They taught you to value what truly matters: integrity over appearances, endurance over ease, substance over show. This sharpening of vision was not accidental. It was the necessary preparation for the doors that will open before you. Without such clarity, you would not be ready to walk through them. Pain also forged empathy within you. Trials have a way of softening the heart, even as they harden the will. Those who have never known sorrow cannot truly understand the sorrow of others. But you, having walked through shadows, now carry within you the ability to comfort, to encourage, to lift others with authenticity. The very wounds that once made you feel weak have become the channels through which compassion flows. This too is part of readiness, for leadership is not merely about strength, but about the ability to connect, to serve, to uplift those who walk behind you. The trials also exposed your weaknesses, not to shame you but to teach you where strength must be built. Every failure, every misstep, every moment of falling short revealed areas that could not be ignored. Instead of allowing those weaknesses to define you, they became invitations to grow, to adapt, to develop new capacities. Without such exposure, you would have carried hidden faults into the future, faults that could have sabotaged your destiny when the stakes were higher. Better to confront them in the classroom of trial than in the arena of purpose. One of the most important lessons trials teach is surrender. When you faced situations beyond your control, you discovered the limits of your own power. You learned that willpower alone cannot move every mountain, that cleverness cannot solve every problem, that strength eventually reaches its breaking point. This recognition, painful though it was, freed you from the illusion of self-sufficiency. It brought you to the place of dependence, where you could finally lean on a strength greater than your own. And in that surrender, paradoxically, you discovered new strength rising within you, a strength not born of striving but of trust. Preparation through trial is often hidden until the moment of release. It is only then, when opportunity finally arrives, that the purpose of pain becomes clear. The very resilience that sustained you in hardship will sustain you in success. The patience that carried you through waiting will keep you steady when things accelerate. The wisdom gained from betrayal will shield you from false allies in the future. What once seemed like wasted years suddenly appears as essential training, without which you would not be able to carry what is now entrusted to you. It is also important to see that your trials have not only prepared you individually, but positioned you within a larger story. Every delay altered your path in subtle ways. Every obstacle redirected your steps. Though at times you may have longed for a smoother road, the difficulties ensured that you arrived exactly where you needed to be, exactly when you needed to be there. The chiseling was not only about shaping your character, but about guiding your course. You are not standing at this moment by accident. The blows of the chisel carved your journey as much as they carved your soul. Thus the hardships you endured should not be despised or forgotten. They were the refining fires, the shaping strikes, the silent tutors of your destiny. They were never meant to destroy you, though they often threatened to. They were meant to reveal you, to strip away what was temporary and uncover what was eternal. Without them, you would not be ready for what lies ahead. With them, you carry within you the strength, the vision, the empathy, and the wisdom that the future will demand. They were not interruptions in your story, they were the very chapters that made the story possible. Readiness for release requires trust, attentiveness, and letting go of what is passing. The very idea of readiness implies more than simply waiting for something to happen. It demands a posture of heart, a sharpening of vision, and a willingness to yield what cannot remain in order to embrace what is coming. Release is never forced upon the unprepared, for the open door means nothing to the one who is asleep or distracted. Readiness is the work done in silence before the trumpet sounds. The inward alignment that ensures the soul can step through the threshold without hesitation. Trust is the foundation of readiness, for without trust, the heart will falter when faced with uncertainty. To trust is to lean upon what cannot yet be seen, to place confidence not in circumstances but in the one who governs them. The path to release is rarely clear, and the steps are seldom mapped out in advance. Trust, therefore, becomes the bridge between the known past and the unknown future. It tells the soul that though the way may be hidden, the destination is certain. Trust whispers that even if the door looks intimidating, or the passage feels narrow, it was designed with you in mind, and no force can keep you from what has been appointed for you. But trust alone is not enough if it is not paired with attentiveness. The world is filled with distractions, and many miss their moment of release simply because their gaze is scattered. Attentiveness is the discipline of listening for the subtle cues, the quiet invitations, the signs that something new is stirring. It is not about frantic searching, but about quiet watching. The one who is attentive notices shifts in the atmosphere, opportunities that arise unexpectedly, encounters that carry unusual significance. To be attentive is to live awake, refusing to drift through life numbed by routine. For release often arrives gently, almost silently, and only the attentive heart will recognize the door when it opens. Letting go is the final act of readiness, and it is often the most difficult. Human nature clings to the familiar, even when the familiar has become burdensome. Old habits, old fears, old identities, all have a way of lodging themselves deeply in the soul. Yet release cannot be grasped with hands that are already full. To step into the new requires loosening the grip on what is passing. This letting go is not abandonment of responsibility, but an act of trust that what is no longer needed can safely fall away. It is the recognition that clinging to yesterday's provision will blind you to tomorrow's abundance. It is the courage to believe that losing what is fading is the only way to gain what is enduring. The interplay of trust, attentiveness, and letting go creates the posture of readiness. Trust anchors the heart against fear, attentiveness sharpens the eyes to perceive, and letting go frees the hands to receive. Without trust, the heart will tremble at the threshold. Without attentiveness, the door will be overlooked. Without letting go, the hands will be too full to grasp the new. But when all three are present, the soul stands prepared, steady, watchful, and open. Trust also reshapes how one interprets delay. What seems like postponement may simply be preparation, and without trust, impatience grows, soaring the spirit. But with trust, waiting becomes purposeful, an opportunity to deepen roots before the storm of change arrives. Attentiveness, meanwhile, transforms the mundane into sacred. The ordinary conversation may carry a spark of guidance. The unnoticed moment may contain the whisper of destiny. Letting go transforms grief into freedom, for instead of lamenting what is lost, the heart begins to rejoice in the space created for what is coming. Readiness is not passive, it is active surrender. It is not the lazy reclining of one who says, "If it comes, it comes," but the watchful stance of one who says, "I am prepared when it arrives." It requires inner work, the clearing away of clutter, the disciplining of thought, the softening of heart. It is the shaping of the vessel before the pouring begins. Just as a farmer does not wait for rain without preparing the soil, so the soul must till its ground before the rains of release fall. Trust tills the ground of the heart. Attentiveness removes the weeds of distraction, and letting go breaks the hardened clods of fear and pride. Only then is the soil ready to receive the seed. Release without readiness can become a snare. To step into a new season without having released the old is to carry baggage that will weigh down the journey. To enter a door without attentiveness is to stumble blindly, unprepared for what lies beyond. To be given freedom without trust is to squander it in anxiety and doubt. Readiness ensures that release does not merely become a change of circumstance, but a transformation of life. Consider how readiness is portrayed in the rhythm of nature. The tree does not cling to its dead leaves when spring calls forth new growth. The river does not resist when the thaw of winter ice releases it into greater flow. The caterpillar does not lament its cocoon when the moment comes to spread wings. In every case, readiness is seen in trust that the transformation is purposeful, attentiveness to the signs of change, and the letting go of what no longer belongs to the present season. So it is with the soul awaiting release. There is also a humility in readiness, for it acknowledges that release is not earned by effort alone, but granted at the appointed time. One cannot pry open the hinge of destiny by force, but one can be ready when it swings. Humility accepts that the timing rests not in human control, but in divine wisdom. Pride resists this, demanding answers and control. But readiness bows in quiet confidence, knowing that the opening will come at the right moment. Trust fuels this humility. Attentiveness keeps it alert, and letting go makes space for it to breathe. Readiness for release is not only about personal blessing, but about stewardship. When the chosen one is released, it is not merely for their own sake, but for the sake of those whose lives will be touched through them. Thus, the posture of readiness is not selfish, but outward, facing. Trust assures the heart that provision will be enough not only for oneself, but for those to whom one is sent. Attentiveness ensures that opportunities to serve are not overlooked. Letting go removes the selfish desire to cling to comfort, making room for the courage to step into responsibility. In the end, readiness is not about perfection, but about posture. It does not mean having all the answers, only being willing to walk forward without them. It does not mean being free of fear, only being willing to move despite it. It does not mean never looking back, only choosing not to live there. Trust steadies trembling feet. Attentiveness keeps the gaze fixed forward, and letting go releases the chains of yesterday. And with this threefold posture, the chosen one stands at the threshold, not shrinking back in hesitation, but poised to step into release when the door finally opens.